The room was filled with chandeliers, champagne glasses, and the soft hum of polite laughter. Yet in the corner of that grand wedding hall sat a young woman in a wheelchair who might as well have been invisible. While silk gowns brushed past her and tailored suits turned their backs, no one noticed the way her hands rested quietly in her lap, or how her eyes followed every movement in the room with a fragile hope that slowly dimmed. This was the CEO's daughter, paralyzed from the waist down after an accident that changed her life forever, and on this day meant to celebrate love, she was being forgotten by everyone who claimed to matter. Before the story continues, take a moment to pause. If you believe that kindness still matters, that second chances can change lives, and that one brave voice can make all the difference, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so these stories can keep reaching hearts like yours. The wedding was one of the most talked about events of the year, a celebration uniting two powerful families, wrapped in wealth and influence. The CEO, a man known for building empires and crushing competition, had spared no expense. Crystal lights reflected off marble floors, live musicians played flawless melodies, and every guest seemed carefully chosen for status rather than sincerity. Yet despite all this perfection, there was an ache hidden beneath the surface, one that lived in the quiet presence of his daughter. Since the accident, she had learned to live in a world that moved too fast for her, a world that smiled politely and then looked away. Today, surrounded by people who knew her name but not her pain, she felt smaller than she ever had. She had once loved weddings. As a child, she imagined dancing until her feet hurt, spinning in laughter, believing love could lift anyone. Now, she watched others glide across the floor while she remained still, her reflection in the polished surface reminding her of everything she could no longer do. Guests offered quick glances filled with discomfort, unsure whether to smile or ignore her entirely. Most chose the latter. Even family friends, people who had watched her grow up, kept their distance, afraid of saying the wrong thing, or worse, being reminded of how fragile life could be. Her father noticed, of course. From across the room, between business associates and ceremonial responsibilities, he saw the way his daughter was left alone. But he was a man trained to solve problems with money and authority, and neither seemed to work here. He had built ramps, hired therapists, provided the best care imaginable, yet he could not force people to truly see her. The guilt weighed on him heavily. He wondered if his obsession with success had cost him the ability to protect her heart. Among the guests was a man no one paid attention to either, though for different reasons. He was a single father, invited only because he worked maintenance for one of the companies tied to the wedding venue. He had been allowed to stay for the ceremony as a courtesy, dressed in a simple suit that didn't quite fit. Life had not been kind to him. After losing his wife to illness, he had learned how quickly the world moves on from grief. He raised his young son alone, balancing long hours and quiet nights filled with exhaustion. He knew what it felt like to be invisible, to sit in a room full of people and feel completely alone. As the celebration unfolded, he noticed the young woman in the wheelchair almost immediately. Perhaps it was because he was used to watching the edges of rooms, the places where forgotten people sit. He saw the way conversations flowed around her like water around a stone, never stopping, never including. He recognized the familiar look in her eyes, the practiced calm hiding something far more painful. It reminded him of his own reflection during school events where other parents stood in pairs, or social gatherings where pity replaced friendship. The man struggled internally. He knew his place in this room, or rather, the lack of one. Speaking up in a hall filled with powerful people felt reckless. He had learned the hard way that drawing attention could cost you everything. Yet as he watched the young woman sit alone, something inside him refused to stay silent. He thought of his son, of the world he hoped to raise him in, one where kindness wasn't optional or reserved for convenience. The wedding reached its peak. The music swelled, guests gathered closer together, laughter grew louder, and still no one had gone to her. She adjusted her posture slightly, a small movement that went unnoticed, and fixed her gaze on the dance floor. The loneliness in that moment was crushing, the kind that doesn't make noise but leaves deep scars. That was when the single father stood up. He didn't make a dramatic entrance or demand attention. He simply walked across the room, each step heavy with uncertainty, until he reached her side. The room seemed to slow, a few heads turning, curiosity flickering briefly before fading again. To them, he was just another face, another background figure. But to her, his presence felt like a sudden warmth in a cold space. He spoke with sincerity, not performance, acknowledging her as a person rather than a problem. He didn't treat her differently, didn't look away or lower his voice. He spoke as someone who understood pain, who knew how it felt to be left out, who believed that everyone deserved to be included, especially on days meant to celebrate love. His words were simple, but they carried weight, cutting through the noise of the room. Something shifted. Guests nearby began to notice. A few stopped talking, their expressions changing from indifference to discomfort. The CEO, watching from afar, felt his breath catch as he saw the man standing beside his daughter, fully present in a way no one else had been all evening. For the first time that day, she smiled. It wasn't the polite smile she wore for strangers, but a real one, filled with surprise and gratitude. As the moment unfolded, others slowly followed. One by one, people approached, awkward at first, then more genuine as they realized how wrong they had been. Conversation started. Laughter returned, this time reaching her. The space around her filled, not with pity but with connection. It was imperfect and overdue, but it was real. The CEO felt something inside him crack open, all his power, all his wealth, and it had taken a single man with nothing to lose to remind everyone of what truly mattered. He watched his daughter come alive in ways he hadn't seen since before the accident, and the gratitude he felt was overwhelming. That night he realized that leadership wasn't about control but about courage, and that sometimes the bravest voices come from the quietest corners. The single father returned to his seat eventually, heart pounding, unsure if he had crossed a line. He expected consequences, maybe even embarrassment. Instead, what followed was something he never imagined. The CEO sought him out later, not with authority, but with humility. A connection was formed, not built on status, but on shared humanity. Opportunities opened, not as charity, but as recognition of character. For the young woman, that night became a turning point. She didn't suddenly regain what she had lost, but she gained something else, something just as powerful. She learned that her worth was not defined by her limitations, and that even in rooms full of people who look past you, all it takes is one person to truly see you. The memory of that evening stayed with her, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that kindness can arrive when you least expect it. As the wedding came to an end and the lights dimmed, the story of what happened spread quietly among the guests, not as gossip, but as reflection. People left changed, carrying with them the uncomfortable truth that they had almost missed something important. Some would forget, others would do better next time. But for those who witnessed it, the image of a single man standing up when no one else would became impossible to ignore. Life continued as it always does, but its direction had subtly shifted. A father rediscovered hope. A daughter found her voice. A single dad showed his son, through action, what it meant to be brave. And a room full of powerful people learned that the smallest act of kindness can echo louder than wealth or status ever could. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of moments when you felt invisible or inspired you to notice someone who might be hurting, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe so more stories like this can be told. Before the ending, here's a special request for you. Please comment below and tell us who you think needs to hear a story like this today. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is one person willing to stand up, speak out, and see the human being everyone else chose to ignore.